Yeah, the towels are. I'm not putting a thing away because the last time you asked me
Put it in the
to
lounge.
away.
Put it in the lounge. Put it in the lounge tomorrow.
Different way of making contact. Yeah. A good is I was like,
Doesn't sound too healthy.
so that's not bad. You see that, Stan?
What's that?
So enough of cappuccino flavor.
You see? Mark. Listen, is it 8 o'clock?
Good evening and welcome to the Ten Commandments, number 6 and 7. We'll be starting in a few minutes at 8 p.m. Thank you.
Mark said that he's not on video.
Sorry, I'm just trying to do something here.
Say hello to new Vaseline. Double cream bliss from Clover. Yogurt has never been so irresistible. Made with love by Clover. Sunshine. New improved sunlight adds fabric soak to washing powder to give you sunlight 2-in-1.
Geraldine? It's coming up.
And fragrance that lasts and lasts and lasts.
Call out that number.
More growth and longer-lasting fragrance.
I'm just trying to get Geraldine onto another Zoom.
Yeah, and I use my hand, and with every little bit that I control, so startup capital for me is not something for us revolve around the capital. That was kind of taught me that you cannot start a business without purpose, right? Because if your primary reason for starting a business is based around making a profit, there comes a time when there's literally nothing happening like we've seen with the lockdown, and certain sectors are only allowed to function. So when you start a business, it has to have purpose and meaning behind it. And I think my greatest experience in this lockdown situation was that homegrown material was no longer a priority for most households due to the lack of income and salary cuts that people were seeing. But the
Yeah, well, it depends what time you're going. I'd want you here when they come. Boy comes and he's got to go to the pantry. Where you'll be on
one
I can remove from logic, not one time.
this agriculture or subsistence farming subject to be a part of the learning program in order evidence with the state at the higher unemployment rate.
Well done.
Please.
Because of inevitability. It's time to lose £8,000 as a chunk of wedding on my final afternoon.
Because the transit is a hospital, so you can like retail.
Play the final like that.
Oh, here's what I think.
Okay.
Order is actually on it. I mean, it's actually divided order down to who's there.
Okay.
There's a lot of Arizona. Colorado is miles away.
Okay.
Same thing.
Thank you.
You know how to do
That's
this?
my,
Arizona, yeah.
no, that's my final.
Yeah, sure.
Your final answer is going up now.
Okay, I appreciate it, Jeremy. I'm going to play Arizona final answer.
Can you
Isn't everybody talks? Are we off the
We have all the results.
do it?
Good, you're there. You've started now. Got no.
Because we have capacity to scale up. The business illegal to.
Would never thought to that. 195 minus 1090.
No, you look down, nice and relax.
People here have never even heard of, let alone seen.
Right?
So the people on here have never even heard of, let alone seen in my life.
Really?
Mm.
For the final hour of the program, you have a full view. Thank you very much for the stage. It's always been a great join us and after some of the minutes, artists. As I said, great to have you with us. Yes, final half hour, we're focused on the global picture. Take you live to the United States. I wonder where one criminal charges brought against former President Jacob Zuma by the Commission. Can you make an announcement on the SABC tomorrow? December in the United States.
Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting momentarily.
The first COVID-19 vaccination took place in early to mid-December in the United States. It's a joint partner. Apply for emergency use of
In the meantime, if you can either ensure that your environments are quiet or please mute yourselves if they're not. Thank you.
vaccines that would be shipped to every state within 24 hours of the Food and Drug Administration's approval of the application for emergency use. Now, between 20 and 40 million doses could be available.
All those who want to hear the 8 o'clock news, this is not the place.
Oh, then you can share with me.
I'll see about that.
And you produce on now, okay? Oh, no, I've got no sound too. It's who you are. And what's that you go? And then they should be. You put yourself out here.
Thank you.
Wild auctions in Israel.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Yeah, that's me, all the way from Eretz Yisrael.
How's it, Oni?
Oni.
How you, Marcus? How you, Johnny Horn?
Perfect, yourself.
Good man.
What sound? You come listen to mine. Okay.
And how do I see all these pictures on the screen at the same time? That's me.
Nee, is Democrat, is it from Eretz Israel? Yes, but he may be on holiday. He's not on holiday. He goes on holiday if he wants to. Just put it up. Thank you.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah. Is that one of working? Yeah. Yeah, he's from Eretz Israel. But he could go on holiday. I think I even know it. Who's this guy? Which one? How old are you? 9. That's his name.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome.
Here he come.
Thank you for joining
Yeah.
us. Looks like I'm going to have to mute everybody, I'm afraid, because many people aren't aware of the rules. Sorry about that. We'll allow you to unmute yourselves if you have questions. But otherwise, you won't be able to hear me.
A bit louder.
Okay. Right. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Ten Commandments, starring Yul Brynner. Take that back. Okay. Today we go from the first tablet to the second tablet. We've done the first 5 commandments on the first tablet, and now we're going to the second tablet, which begins with number 6. And these are the man-to-man, person-to-person commandments, beginning with Lo Tirtzach. Now, depending on which Chumash you look at, which English translation, some say thou shalt not kill, like the Art Scroll Chumash, which is on page 410 or 411 if you'd like to follow, but there isn't really much to follow today. There's just 4 words, Lo Tirtzach and Lo Tinaf. Thou shalt not murder and thou shalt not commit adultery. So you don't really need the text. But the word Tirtzach, the Art Scroll says thou shalt not kill. Other Chumoshim say thou shalt not murder. In my humble opinion, murder is more correct. Tirtzach, from the word rotzeach, a murderer, or ritzicha, murder. So to me, murder is a more correct translation of the word tirtzach. The word for killing is harigah, is not murder. So if you've been to West Park Cemetery, the Holocaust Memorial, the big, beautiful, amazing powerful memorial there with the 6 shofars, the hands holding the shofars. We have the annual Yom HaShoah commemoration in front of it when we're not in lockdown. There is the words Lo Tirtzach there in the center. They're not as big as the shofars, but if you look the next time you go, you'll see very artistically done the words Lo Tirtzach. So to me personally, I think murder is more correct rather than kill, but as I say, there are other opinions. Now, one of the reasons that I believe murder is a more correct translation than kill is because killing is sometimes permissible and in fact even necessary or obligatory. Who can unmute themselves and tell me when it's permissible or obligatory to kill someone?
Self-defense, man.
To save your own
Self-defense.
life.
Thank you. Self-defense is one answer, quite correct. You don't have to wait for
I'm a like.
Save your own life.
Amalek, okay, to kill Amalek, okay. I didn't think of that one, but there's a third one. So self-defense, you can't wait for them to kill you to kill them back. It doesn't work, eh? If your life is being threatened, then you have no alternative. But there is, in the Torah, capital punishment is mandated on certain occasions. It's the exception rather than the rule, and you have to have many, many preconditions before a Beth Din would order someone to be executed for a capital crime. But there are times, and there were times in history when people were executed by Torah law. So capital punishment exists in the Torah, not practiced today. I mean, in the state of Israel since 1948, the only person they ever executed was Adolf Eichmann, Yimach Shemo, which is another debate for another time. But so capital punishment, self-defense, or as Johnny said, Amalek. So those are exceptions when you're actually permitted or in fact obligated to kill someone. So thou shalt not kill is therefore, in my opinion, not the best translation of tirtzach, but thou shalt not murder. Murder is never permissible. To go and murder someone in cold blood, premeditated, that is never permitted. So thou shalt not murder. Now, in fact, this mitzvah and the next one that we're doing tonight are both capital crimes. If you murder someone, you could be executed in the days of the Sanhedrin when there was a Jewish Supreme Court in Jerusalem. You could face the death penalty for murdering someone. Again, there had to be 2 witnesses, you had to be warned. The preconditions to take someone's life in a court of law were very, very strict, and it didn't happen too often or easily. But on the books, murder is a capital crime. In fact, tonight we are going to do 2 of the 3 cardinal sins of Judaism. Normally, we say that saving a life is paramount in Jewish thought and theology. To save a life, you could eat chazer on Yom Kippur, God forbid, if that was the only way you could save a life. So life is sacred, and saving a life is the most important thing. But there are 3 exceptions to the rule. When we would not save our life, we would rather give up our life than violate these 3 cardinal sins, being murder, adultery, and idolatry, the 2nd commandment. So if somebody has a gun to your head and says, bow down to this idol, or kill this person, or rape this woman, otherwise I'm going to kill you, then unlike all the other mitzvahs of the Torah where saving a life comes first, In these three cardinal sins, you're not allowed to do the sin. You should rather allow yourself to be killed, God forbid. These are three sins which we may not commit under any circumstances, even if it means losing our own life. So this is one of them. The Emperor Hadrian, one of the most notorious anti-Semites of history, once asked the Talmudic sage Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah, why is God's name not mentioned in the second tablet on the 10 Commandments that we're starting tonight? Commandments number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there is no mention whatsoever of God's name. In the first one, it's full of it. The first tablet is Anochi Hashem, I am the Lord your God, etc., etc. Hashem's name appears throughout. How come, asked Hadrian of the rabbi, in the second tablet, there's no mention of God? You know what Rabbi Yoshua answered him? He says, Your Majesty, I travel around the country, I see your face and your statue and your coat of arms all over, on every government building, on every bridge, on every important landmark throughout the country. You have your coat of arms, you have your statue, a bust of yourself, whatever. But I don't see you putting your face or your coat of arms in the lavatories, in the outhouses, in places which are not so respectable and clean. Obviously not. Likewise, the King of Kings, Hashem, is happy to put his name with the first set of commandments on the first tablet, which is faith, no idolatry, no blasphemy, Shabbos, honoring parents. Those are beautiful, noble commandments to observe. God is happy to have his name associated with them. But murder, adultery, thievery, lying, jealousy, God does not want to have his name associated with those things. So that was quite a logical answer. Now, the Mechilta, one of the Medrashim, says a very fascinating thing, and we'll go through it in these next 5 commandments, this week and next, and we'll see how long it takes us to finish all 10 commandments. But I don't have a visual here on the screen for you, but try and visualize in your mind the 2 tablets with the 10 commandments, 5 on each side. So the top one on the right side is I am Hashem your God, yeah, faith. The top one on the left is here, what we're doing now, Lo Titzach, thou shalt not murder. It says the Mechilta that number 6 corresponds to number 1. Number 7 corresponds to number 2. If you just go across horizontally, not only are they in the same line on the tablets, but they actually relate to each other conceptually. So number 6 relates to number 1. Thou shalt not murder is the diametric opposite of I am Hashem your God. If you murder a human being who is created in the image of God, you have, kavayochel, so to speak, killed God. So to murder is tantamount to the first commandment, which is belief in God. And murdering is the opposite of that. Now, the next question is, why does number 6 follow number 5? Number 5 we did last week was Kabed es avicha v'semecha, honor your father and mother. How do we go from that directly to thou shalt not murder? Okay, I know many parents have threatened to kill their children when they misbehave and all that, but that's not the answer. Some of the answers given is, firstly, a wealthy man who refuses to support his elderly parents who need his help, the rabbis say, is tantamount to a murderer, because they will falter and fail and die without their support. Secondly, the connection may be this. Perhaps a devoted son will see somebody behaving badly to his father or mother, exploiting them, abusing them, or dishonoring them. this misguided son will want to observe the fifth commandment to honor his parents, and he'll say, this guy abused my mother, I'm going to avenge her honor, and I'm going to kill him. And he'll think he's observing the fifth commandment. So therefore, we are told that you should know that nothing justifies murder. Okay, that's another answer why number 6 follows number 5. Now, a general question. The 10 commandments were given to the Jews at Mount Sinai. I understand God telling the whole world not to be murderers because unfortunately there are many, many murderers in the world. But Jews, do Jews need to be told not to kill people? You know a Jew who killed anybody? Which Jew is a murderer? Actually, I must tell you that I once visited a Jew in prison here in Johannesburg. I went to the notorious prison in Diepkloof. Diepkloof prison they call euphemistically Sun City. Don't ask me why, but it's no holiday. It was scary just to go there as a visitor. So one of the wardens there decided to be very ambitious. I came to visit a particular individual, and this guy decided, well, a rabbi's here. Let me call all the Jews in Diepkloof to come and see the rabbi. So suddenly I had didn't have a minion, thank God, but I had a handful of Jews, maybe a half a million or less. And one of them was from the notorious Israeli mafia, who allegedly actually killed some people here. And I must tell you, just standing in the same room with this gentleman, I was getting the creeps. It was a very chilling sensation. It was a shiver going down my spine. This guy looked so cold and so emotionless. It was frightening. But generally speaking, Jews are not murderers, right? In fact, I would quote the famous commentary, Rabbi Jackie Mason, who has this whole routine, you know, that did a Jew ever kill anybody? No Jew ever killed anyone. Every Jew says, if he would say one more word, I would kill him. What's that word? Nobody knows. So no Jew ever actually kills anybody. Every Jew almost killed someone, right? Almost. I would have, but we never really do it. So why do we need to be told a commandment by God not to murder people? Does God think we would be murderers? God forbid. So the commentaries give so first of all, I have told you that there are exceptions, unfortunately. And sadly, in Israel, if you read the news in Israel, which is a Jewish country, murder is not unheard of. And not only in the Palestinian territories, but even in Jewish communities. It has been known to happen. There's gangs in Israel, Jewish gangs, I'm sorry to say. So unfortunately it happens. There's crime in Israel. There's Jew-on-Jew violence in Israel, tragically. But it's the exception. So therefore the commentaries say there's more subtle forms of murder that the Torah is referring to as well. For example, the most famous one is Hamal b'pnei chaveroi barabim. We read it in the Mishnah, one who embarrasses someone publicly, puts someone to shame publicly, is tantamount to murdering him, because if you get embarrassed publicly, your face, the blood drains from your face. You go white. You've actually spilled his blood, so to speak. Secondly, the Chumash, the Torah itself, compares rape to murder. So we see that you don't have to murder someone to effectively murder them. Thirdly, we read in the story of Egla Arufa. Those of you from my Tuesday night Gemara shir will remember we learned in Sotah Egla Arufa, the last chapter, when a murder victim is found on the road, we measure the nearest city, and the elders of that city have to make a whole atonement ceremony with a calf at a riverbed. Why? In case they allowed this person to leave their town at night unescorted, and then he was murdered on the road at night. The community that allowed him to leave unescorted, that did not offer him hospitality to spend the night and leave in the morning when it's safer to be on the roads or something like that, that community bears a degree of responsibility for his murder. Fourthly, if you take someone's income away, you close someone's business down, unfair competition or the like, you've taken away his livelihood. You could cause him to starve to death, God forbid. So that's also tantamount, a subtle form of murder. And the most subtle form of murder of all, rabbis give two cases. One who was unqualified, he learned a little bit. You know, a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. Someone who was unqualified to paskin a shaila, to give a halachic answer or halachic advice, and he rushes in where angels fear to tread, and he starts shooting his mouth off, giving halachic advice when he has no right to do so. He's not so knowledgeable. He's not such a scholar. He could be committing murder. He could be giving terribly wrong and misguided advice. The converse of that is a scholar who knows and should be giving advice and declines to give advice, declines to teach, declines to answer a shaila. He's very humble. He wants to mind his own business. He doesn't want to get involved. Leave me alone. But if you have the knowledge and you withhold that knowledge from the community, it's considered wrong and sinful, and almost on a very subtle level, akin to murder, in the sense that you're not giving the life-supporting wisdom of Torah to others. Now, to conclude number 6, I ask you the following question. How do we go from number 1, I am the Lord your God, in a few sentences, in a few short breaths, suddenly we're on the second tablet, number 6, thou shalt not murder, number 7, not to commit adultery, to steal, to lie, to cheat, to be jealous. Such ugly, horrible characteristics. How did we get there so quickly from the first commandment and the second commandment, the third, the fourth? There's such noble, lofty, abstract ideas, philosophical, mystical, theological, and suddenly we're down in the gutters. How did we get there? How could they be in the same 10 commandments? How could number 1 and number 6 be in the same list? I'll share with you an answer from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe proved it from our own generation. He said, if you don't have number 1, I am Hashem your God, and you don't realize that that morality has to be an absolute morality, meaning not something that human beings decide what's right, what's wrong by referendum. 50 years ago, many things were forbidden. Today, they become mitzvahs in our society. Morality has to be absolute and God-given. Otherwise, we see what happened 70, 80 years ago. The Nazis killed not only 6 million Jews, but millions of others in Europe. And they rationalized it. What was the rationalization? Jews are scum of the earth. We're actually cleansing planet Earth from this rubbish. We're making the world a better place. They rationalize it. Intelligent people, the most intelligent, sophisticated, civilized, cultured country in Europe, with great universities and great museums and great art centers of art and music, and they stooped to the levels of bestiality never seen in history. How could that be? Because there was not a commitment to commandment number one. The first commandment, I'm the Lord your God, and I will tell you what's right and what's wrong. I'm telling you number 6, thou shalt not murder. Don't come and give me rationalizations. Don't come and give me explanations and stories. And likewise, number 7, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, adultery is very easy to rationalize, much more than murder. She's locked in a loveless marriage. I'm helping her. I'm giving her a little bit of human happiness. You think you're doing a mitzvah. Bobamaisis. So we can rationalize everything. But if it all starts with commandment number 1, and we realize that our moral code and the do's and don'ts, the thou shalts and thou shalt nots, the ethics and the morality of life has to be governed by God, not but what I think or what I can rationalize. And if it says thou shalt not murder and thou shalt not commit adultery, then it's not negotiable because God said so. Now we understand how we got from number 1 to number 6 and why number 6 and number 7, 8, 9, and 10 all need number 1 as a basis and a foundation. Okay, we move on to number 7. Lo tinaf. That's the Hebrew word for adultery. Thou shalt not commit adultery. So you know the story. Moses was up at Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights getting the whole Torah. He finally comes down. The Jews are waiting with bated breath. Okay, Moses, what's the bottom line? He says, boys, I have good news and bad news. The good news is I got him down to 10. The bad news is adultery stays in. And not such a joke, actually, because it's a commandment that not everybody is comfortable with. And some people find very difficult. Every year people ask me, how come on Yom Kippur afternoon at Mincha we read about the forbidden sexual relationships? On Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Shul, at the holiest time, we have nothing else to read. Rabbi, come on. And you know what? The rabbis say that this is, at the end of the day, this is the acid test of our morality, because it is a very, very difficult commandment to keep for many people in many situations. Now, the Hebrew lo tinaf can be cut into 2 words. Ten af, give anger, makes anger. It makes God very angry. Now, God is very patient, much more patient than a loving Jewish mother with her errant children. God is infinite patient, has infinite patience. But when it comes to number 7, he loses patience very quickly. He gets angry. And he gets angry because adultery is very, very destructive. And if you look, as we said before, number 7, if we go horizontally back to the first tablet, it's corresponding to number 2. What is the second commandment? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Idolatry. Adultery is akin to idolatry. Why? Idolatry is being unfaithful to God. Adultery is being unfaithful to your spouse. Both are a lack of faith. Now, people might say, so God gets very angry because it destroys the harmony and the shalom bayis in families. And God really doesn't like that. But people ask, why is it so terrible? Today we have a term, it's called consenting adults. As long as it's consenting adults, why shouldn't you be able to do whatever you want? Who are you bothering? So I'll give you 5 reasons why adultery is bad even amongst consenting adults. First of all, as we said, it ruins marriages. Second of all, this is one you never thought of. If it's young people and the woman conceives from a man other than her husband and has a child, and nobody knows who the father is, it's a big mystery. They all think her husband is the father, but really someone else is the father. The child is not going to be able to fulfill commandment number 5 to honor his father, because he's honoring the wrong guy. He doesn't even know who his father is. Thirdly, when people do not know who their father is, it could actually wind up leading to incest. It could be this guy fathered the child here, a boy here, and he fathered a girl there, and nobody knows that he's the father in either case. He's a serial philanderer, and the boy marries the girl, and they're brothers and sisters. Fourthly, it's stealing. You're stealing the affection of a spouse. And finally, it could lead to murder as well. How many times have we seen the newspaper headlines screaming, "Jilted husband murders wife and lover"? Caught them in the act. Came home early from work. Took out his gun and killed 2 people. And felt absolutely justified in doing so. Okay, so it ruins the lives of husbands, of wives, and of children forever. Nobody is unaffected. It's not just consenting adults minding their own business. Eventually, it ruins many, many lives. Now, as I said before, like number 6, number 7 is also a capital crime. You could get the death penalty for adultery. But we have to define what is the biblical definition of adultery that applies to the 7th commandment of the 10 commandments. Not every illicit sexual relationship qualifies as adultery or as a capital crime. It's a capital crime only if a Jewish man has an illicit intimate relationship with a Jewish woman who was married to a different Jewish man at the time. So premarital and postmarital is not permissible, but it's not a capital crime. You could get the death penalty only if it's a Jewish man with a woman who is currently married to another Jewish man, not her lover. Then it becomes a capital crime. And again, as we said before, there has to be 2 witnesses who warn them and have to actually catch them in the act. So it didn't happen too often. But on the books, it could be a capital crime. So the 10 Commandments, number 7 is a capital crime if it's a Jewish man with a Jewish woman who's married to another Jewish man. Other forms of extramarital relationships, whether before marriage or after marriage, are forbidden. But it's a capital crime only in the case that I explained now. Now, here's something very important. Let's say a couple gets separated and she's already dating other people, but she does not yet have a get, a Jewish halachic divorce from her ex, from her husband. Even if she has a civil divorce, she's still halachically married to the first husband. And if she winds up getting intimate with somebody, even just dating, it is full-blown adultery because she doesn't yet have a get. Furthermore, if she's a young woman of childbearing age and she has a child, that child is the classic mamzer, a bastard. The definition of illegitimacy in Jewish law is not anyone born out of wedlock. A mamzer is only one born of an adulterous or incestuous union. Most mamzerim in our generation came about not from full-blown adultery, where people are completely immoral, but from people who were separated or civilly divorced, but they never got a get. And in America in particular, people remarry without a get. They don't understand that you have to have a get. South Africa, we're much more traditionally observant, and most people here know they need a get. But you shouldn't even date. You shouldn't go for coffee with someone else until you have a get, because it could lead to something and then it's full-blown adultery. So please, if you know someone who's getting divorced, make sure that they get a get, not just a civil divorce. You could save lives spiritually, and it's very, very, very important. I cannot stress how important it is. Now, many people have sadly engaged in extramarital affairs, assuming that it would end in marriage. They're not happy in the current marriage. They found someone now they're really excited about, and they're already on an intimate relationship, waiting for the divorce to happen and remarriage to happen. And guess what happens? He reconciles with his wife and never marries her. And then she feels doubly used and doubly abused. So if you're considering marriage, don't date until the person is divorced and properly divorced with a get. In fact, the Gemara says that if a woman commits adultery, she actually has to be divorced from her husband. The husband has to divorce her if it's proven. Sometimes a woman says she committed adultery because she wants a divorce, because she has other things on her mind. But if you know for a fact that she did, then you're actually not supposed to live together anymore. However, she's not only forbidden to her husband, she's also forbidden to her lover. So it's not so simple for her to divorce the husband and marry the lover. Because if we know for a fact that he was the adulterer, then you may not be allowed to marry him either. So you'll be left neither here nor there. So in general, adultery is not such a good idea. It's not as exciting as it's made out to be. It creates more tzoros than pleasure. The pleasure is 5 minutes and the tzoros is for a lifetime. So adultery too, as I said before, is one of the 3 cardinal sins. Yehorig val yaver. If somebody says, be intimate with this woman who's somebody else's wife, or I'll kill you, you have to allow yourself to be killed. You're not allowed to do it. Now, I've had to counsel people over the years in these precarious situations, and I still remember a guy sitting in my office saying, I'm not a Catholic priest. I wasn't asking him to give me confession, but he came and poured his heart out to me. And he says, Rabbi, what should I tell you? It just happened. I wasn't planning it. It just happened. I said, I believe you. I'm sure it wasn't premeditated scheming and planning. But what happens? a man and a woman who are not married to each other just happen to be working late in the same office and everybody else has gone home and they're the only two guys left. And it just happened. So there is something called yichud. We've spoken about the laws of yichud on other occasions. Yichud is when the chosin and kala after the chuppah are alone in the room for 5-10 minutes with two witnesses outside. It's called yichud. It means privacy, aloneness, unity. And unless you are married to each other, you should not be alone behind closed doors with a member of the opposite sex. And those are called the laws of yichud. And if people would observe the laws of yichud, they would never get into the position where they could stumble and sin with commandment number 7 here, because you will never get to first base, because you will never allow yourself to be in a compromised situation where only the two of you are alone privately. In the last couple of years, there have been some embarrassing situations around the world in Jewish communities. And I'm sorry to say, even rabbis who were compromised. And there's been a lot of awareness made that when a rabbi counsels a woman, he should make sure that the door should not be closed. I have a rule in my office, even if the secretary comes in to take notes or whatever, the door is never closed. Today they're going so far as to saying that you should make new doors that have glass windows on top, so there can never be that kind of privacy that could get people into trouble. And whatever precautions we can take are helpful. Now, okay, so I said that the capital crime is only with an Eshes Ish, with a woman, a Jewish woman married to another Jewish man. But that does not mean that other forms of extramarital, of non-marital intimate relationships are permitted by halacha. They are not. So premarital and postmarital intimate relationships are not permitted under any circumstance. It's not a capital crime. Sometimes in the old days you might get lashes, which is quite serious. But it's not a capital crime, but that does not mean that it's permissible. It's strictly prohibited. So people who are going out should go out to the extent that they decide that they are meant for each other, and they should get married. They shouldn't go out for 6 years and for 10 years and have to live together for 6 years before they decide if they're suited. That's a baba maisa. You don't need to do that. You can go out with objective matrimony, and after a few weeks or a few months or whatever it takes, a year, you make a decision, yes or no. And if it's the right decision, then you get married. I remember my late colleague, Rabbi Bernard Olav Hasholem, saying he did a lot of marriage counseling in his day and taught brides and grooms. He said he had a young woman who came to him complaining, Rabbi, why won't these men ever commit? She'd been through a number of relationships and it went on, and why doesn't the guy ever commit? And Rabbi Bernard was very blunt with her. I don't think I could ever say what he said to her. He said to her in no uncertain terms, he said, maybe if you stop giving them free samples, they'll actually buy the product. How's that for calling a spade a spade? Bless his soul. The Rambam writes very clearly that no form of physical contact, not only intimate contact, but any physical contact should be avoided because it leads to compromised situations. And therefore, he says, men and women who are not married to each other should not engage in hugging and kissing. And it's a safety measure and precautions to keep out of trouble. And they are very useful and very important because we have a principle in Jewish law, ein apotropos la'arayos, which means when it comes to the moral playing field of relationships between men and women. You cannot trust anybody. Don't assume that this person can be trusted. Oh, he's such an honest person. Oh, he's such a religious person. Oh, he's such a this. There's a story in the Talmud of a young woman that needed some protection, and they decided to she should spend the night on the property of an old Talmudic sage with a long white beard, a holy Jew, and he put her in the barn, apart, away from his house. And in the middle of the night, he was aroused. He knows that there's this gorgeous young woman in the barn next door, and this old rabbi with a long white beard could not contain himself and goes into the barn and pulls up a ladder to go climb up to the loft where this young woman is sleeping, and he's already undressing to do the sin. And thank God he saw his talis cotton, he saw his tzitzis that he was wearing under his shirt, and suddenly sanity returned and he stopped himself on time. But what is the message? The message is that you cannot trust anybody when it comes to the intimate relationship. As I said before, that's why it's read on Yom Kippur, because this is the acid test of our morality. And anybody can stumble and anybody can make these kind of mistakes. It's very, very difficult. And we understand that. And that's why we take all these seemingly extreme precautionary measures, not to be in the same room behind closed doors, not to be in the same house. If there's only one man and one woman, all the laws of Yichud. So one cannot be too careful. Okay, next week, not to steal. I'm going to answer this question next week, so you'll have to come back. But you're welcome to unmute yourselves and ask any questions that you may have on tonight's subject. Any questions? Comments? Rebuttals? Feel free.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Jewish man with a Jewish woman who's not married to a Jewish man.
Is that a question?
Adultery.
Somebody asking me a question? If you are, please speak up a bit louder.
It's not adultery. It's not a capital crime. No,
Okay, if you're asking a question, I need to hear you a little bit louder. If you're talking amongst yourselves, go right ahead.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question, please?
Yes, you may.
What happens with a grandmother and a grandson? They cannot be alone in an apartment together at night?
A grandmother and a grandson may be together. Parents and children and grandparents and grandchildren may be together. Those are the only exceptions to the rule.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. But nephews and nieces and cousins and extended family may not. Parents and children and grandparents and grandchildren may.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I can't believe there's no questions on such a hot topic.
There's too many questions.
Okay, give me one.
Rabbi, what would happen to a man that will stay away from his wife and mess around for about 6 years and then come back to his wife and she accepts him? Is that whole marriage legit again?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's a good question. Now, I have to say something here which may be perceived as sexist, but I hasten to assure you that it's not. So please bear with me. Hear me out. By biblical law, a man was allowed to have more than one wife. Polygamy was permissible by biblical law. 1,000 years ago, Rabbeinu Gershom, the leading rabbi in Europe, banned polygamy. Today we can barely afford one wife, so there's nothing to talk about. But by biblical law, you could have more than one wife. So this guy could say, well, you know, I was looking for another wife or something. Of course, we know it's Bobamaisis, but because by biblical law, a man could have more than one wife, therefore, the law is a little bit unequal here. A man can have more than one wife, but a woman, by biblical law, could not have more than one husband. Now, that sounds unfair and unequal, but there's a very simple logical reason why a woman cannot have more than one husband. Who can tell me what it is?
Need to know who the father of the child is.
Thank you very much. Exactly. If she has more than one husband, we'll never know whose father this kid is. The kid will not know who to honor. We'll never know who are the heirs to the man's estate, etc., etc., etc. So, because it is unequal in the sense that a man could have more than one wife, but a woman may not have more than one husband, therefore she does not have to divorce him if he messes around, but he had to divorce her if she messed around. So I know it sounds unequal and unfair, and half the audience is going to be upset with me, but I've tried to explain it that there's a simple reason for it. It's not a prejudice against women of the Torah, God forbid. It's just a simple biological reality.
Makes
Now, of
sense.
course, we always counsel for Shalom Bayit, for people to be reconciled. And even in adulterous cases, we still try and reconcile. It's not easy to rebuild the trust in a relationship when these things happen, but it has been done. I know couples who have succeeded remarkably, and very often it's a sign that things had reached rock bottom, and this was a message that they have to really start working on their marriage, and many people do. But sometimes there's a halachic impediment if it's proven that she was messing around with someone else, then it could be a problem. But generally speaking, we would still try and repair the damage and save the marriage. Okay, has that opened the floodgates? Now we have a whole lot more questions.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. I'm still happy to spend a few more minutes if there's any more questions.
Rabbi, what is the position with a divorced man living with a divorced woman?
You know what the Talmud said? When a divorced man lives with a divorced woman, there are 4 people in the bed. Okay, but that's not what you're asking. So what is your question?
I mean, if they live together for a certain amount of time, isn't that the same as being married? Or even a young couple who are single and they live together, isn't that recognized? Don't they have to get a get if it's after a year or something?
Okay, also a very good question. So in the olden days, in biblical times, people just began living together, and that's how you got married. But over the years, we developed the tradition of a chuppah and so on and so forth. Today, we are not at all happy with people who do that. However, if they do it and they live together as common law man and wife for on a permanent basis, and people refer to them as a married couple, and then they decide to split, there are occasions when the Beth Din might rule that they need a get. So generally speaking, not. And we certainly don't approve of that as a form of marriage. We would insist there should be a chuppah. But there may be times when, if they effectively lived as man and wife on a permanent basis, there may be times when they need a get. But each case has to be judged independently. Not an easy, I can't give a sweeping answer, a generalization.
Thank you.
But again, there's a lot of mistaken notions in our community that people think that if they're widowed or divorced and they're now in middle age or older and they find a companion, and no, it's just companionship. It's not permissible. And I keep encouraging people, get married. No, I've been there, done that. I'm not having any children. What's the big deal? It doesn't matter if you're not having children. You're not allowed to live together unless you're married to each other. So we must try and encourage people to get married before they start living together. And by the way, I'll just end with this. I was at a conference in Israel some years ago, and we heard an excellent talk from a psychologist. And he said that the statistics show that couples who live together before marriage actually, surprisingly, shockingly, have a higher divorce rate than couples who do not live together before marriage. And he said, why should that be? Isn't that illogical? People say, well, let's move in, we'll live together, and we'll see if it works out, then we'll get married. So it's sort of it's a test period, right? Trial period. And surely if after that they see that it works and they get married, surely they should be more successful. Why are the statistics, and statistics don't lie, why do statistics say that couples who live together before marriage have a higher divorce rate? So he gave a beautiful, fascinating explanation. He said, what is marriage? The whole basis, the whole underpinning, the whole foundation of marriage is that it's an unconditional commitment. Other people say, till death do us part, through thick and thin, all the whatever. We don't have those things in our ceremony, but that's the idea. It's an unconditional commitment. The whole point of getting married is we are committing ourselves to each other, come what may. There may be difficult moments, there may be challenges, but we're married. We're committing ourselves not just to the individual, but to the sacred institution of marriage as well. And therefore, we'll do everything in our power to make it work, even in difficult times. What is the idea of living together before marriage? Conditional, not unconditional, conditional. Let's check it out. Let's try. If it works, good. Doesn't work, cheers, I'm out of here. So you're preparing for an unconditional commitment. How? Through a conditional commitment. That's the worst possible preparation for marriage, he said. I thought that was brilliant. So again, we have to encourage our children, our grandchildren, our friends of all ages. If they want to, if they like someone that much that they want to live together, I'm available. I'm a marriage officer of the Republic of South Africa. If I do your chuppah, you don't have to go to Home Affairs. I give you a marriage certificate from South Africa too. Okay? So let's try and organize that people should get married. Sei gesund, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rabbi.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good night, Rabbi.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rabbi.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I'm going now, get married again.
Want to get married? Call me tomorrow, okay?
Thanks, Rabbi.